Hi, I'm Mr. Eli. Today I'll share the painful journey of someone who faced the coldest truth life has to offer. And believe me, if only this were just a revenge story. When I found out my sister booked me a one-way trip to Shady Pines, I didn't argue. I had something she didn't. That's how it all started. A text message from Linda, my only sister, cheerfully announcing the big plan. You're gonna love it at Shady Pines, Rob. I already did the paperwork. It's the best place in the county. She even added a little smiley face at the end, as if this was a surprise vacation and not an exile. I just stared at my phone, blinked twice, and set it down on the kitchen table. No anger, no panic, just cold awareness. Because what Linda didn't know was, I'd been expecting this move. Not this exact nursing home, maybe, but some version of this ending. And unlike Linda, I played the long game. She thought I was slipping, that I was slow, that because I was 73 and walked with a cane, I was halfway out the door. What she didn't realize was that I'd built entire hospitals, coordinated federal grants, and run payroll for a company that supported 1,200 people. I kept everything sharp because sharpness had kept me alive. She thought she had control, that she'd pulled the right strings, that one doctor's letter and a sprinkle of concerned daughter energy would be enough to ship me off to the edge of town and unlock the house keys. I didn't argue, because I didn't need to. I'd already set everything in motion. 3 months earlier, Linda started visiting more than usual. At first, I thought maybe it was guilt or boredom, but then came the changes. She brought over casseroles I didn't like, cleaned things that didn't need cleaning, reorganized my filing cabinet without asking. You just have so many papers, Rob, she said. I'm just trying to help. Help. That word became her armor. Everything she did, from tossing my old college yearbooks to unsubscribing me from my own email newsletters, she did under the banner of help. She changed my Wi-Fi password without telling me, said the old one was too easy to guess. I didn't bother arguing, just opened my notebook and wrote down the date and time. Wi-Fi changed, 11:12 a.m., without permission. That's how I started the ledger. Every time she helped, I added a new line. Power bill redirected, check. Phone service moved to her name, logged. Credit card company called to inquire about suspicious charges. All documented. She thought I didn't notice when she started asking about the deed. Is the house still in your name, Rob? You should really think about simplifying things. You know, just in case something ever happens. I smiled and told her I'd think about it. I always smiled, but I also opened a private trust account the next morning. The ledger became my second brain, spiral-bound battered edges filled with neat block letters and dates. I kept it in the drawer under my coffee maker, a drawer nobody but me ever touched. Here, I logged everything, her visits, what she said when she said it, when she called Dr. Simmons behind my back, when she offered to help with paying bills and asked for online banking access. I played along, let her think I was softening. I gave her a fake banking login. She tried it 3 times. I logged that too. Then I called Ellie. Ellie is my granddaughter, my late son's only child. Law student, sharp as a scalpel, and loyal in the way you pray family can be. She was the only one I trusted with the truth. I think she's positioning for something, I told her on the phone. Sounds like she's building a case. Ellie replied, you need to protect your assets, yesterday. So, we got to work. Ellie helped me set up a revocable trust. I moved the house into it. Not just the house, my retirement funds, the car, the stocks, everything. I gave the trusteeship to her and a third-party lawyer I'd worked with during my firm's acquisition years ago. Linda wasn't even in the will anymore. Ellie also installed a few discreet security cameras, ones that sent clips straight to my encrypted email account. We even replaced the camera in the doorbell with a newer model. Linda never noticed. I didn't just want to stop her. I wanted evidence. 2 weeks after setting up the trust, I gave Linda a little test. I told her I was thinking of updating my will, maybe leaving the house to a foundation or museum instead of family. She smiled politely. Then she showed up at my door 3 days in a row. Just making sure you're okay, she said. You've been sounding scattered lately. She started using new words. Confused, forgetful, unsteady. She made them sound like casual observations, but I knew what she was doing. It was the language of documentation. She was seeding the story. I played the part, told her I'd forgotten where I put my reading glasses, asked her to help me find the car keys. I even let her see me mix up the sugar and salt one morning. The truth was, I was sharper than I'd been in years. The mind clears quickly when someone's trying to steal your life out from under you. The next day, a letter arrived. It was a scheduled evaluation from a social worker. Routine elderly care check, it said, requested by a concerned relative. I called Ellie. She's trying to create a medical paper trail, she said. That's the first step to a guardianship request. You'll be deemed unfit and she'll be given power of attorney. Let her try, I said. The social worker arrived on a Thursday afternoon. A young woman named Clara, kind eyes, firm handshake. She had a clipboard and an apologetic smile. I'm required to ask a few questions, Mr. Alton, she said. Is that okay? Of course, I replied. Want some tea while we talk? She blinked. You made tea? 3 kinds, black, green, and Earl Grey. Pick your poison. She laughed, and the ice cracked. We sat at the dining table, sunlight pouring through the window. Clara asked about memory loss, confusion, physical difficulty. I gave her precise answers, showed her my meal schedule, medication log, and the notebook where I tracked blood pressure and steps walked. She nodded slowly, scribbling as we spoke. May I ask why your sister felt the need to request this evaluation? I smiled gently. You'd have to ask her that. Before she left, I handed her a printout of the last 3 months of my financial transactions, all clean, all categorized. Clara stared at it. I used to be an engineer, I said. I like when things balance. 3 weeks later, Linda returned, this time with flowers and a stack of folders. She seemed tense beneath the surface, like someone trying to smile through gritted teeth. Big day, she said cheerfully. We're doing a tour of Shady Pines. You'll love it. It's not permanent, just a look. Of course, she hadn't mentioned anything about a tour before. She'd already called ahead, booked the room, arranged transport. I said nothing, just nodded. On the way there, she hummed along to the radio. I stared out the window, watching familiar streets pass like old friends waving goodbye. Shady Pines was clean, quiet, filled with soft piano music and gentle-voiced staff. We've got a lovely private room, the intake coordinator said. I smiled politely and said I'd stay a week to see how it feels. Linda's eyes sparkled. Before she left, she handed me a phone with no SIM card. Just for games and music, she said. She didn't know I'd brought my own, or that Ellie was tracking everything in real time. I unpacked slowly. Then I checked the camera feed on my phone. Linda was already inside my house. Linda didn't waste any time. The first thing she did was disable the security system. She must have assumed it was only connected to the company that installed it. But it was tied into my cloud storage. Every movement, every recording, every voice command. I watched her on my screen from the corner table in Shady Pines' common room. Her hands moved fast, checking drawers, flipping through files, opening closets. She walked into my study and opened the safe. I'd left it empty on purpose. Her frustration was visible. She cursed under her breath, then made a call. I couldn't hear the audio, but I saw her lips. He has to have copies. That night, I received an email alert from my lawyer. Linda had called their office pretending to be me. She'd asked for copies of recent revisions to my estate documents. They didn't give her anything. I added it to the ledger. The next day, Ellie visited me. She's trying to find the will, I said. She's going to realize it's not in the house, Ellie replied. Are you ready for what's next? I nodded. Let's give her something to find. Ellie returned to the house the next morning, claiming she was checking on Grandpa's things. Linda barely tried to hide her suspicion. Why are you here? She asked. Ellie smiled sweetly. Just grabbing a few of his old files. He asked me to make sure they're safe. Linda's eyes narrowed. Which files? Oh, you know, the important ones. Deed, will, financials. Bait dropped. She watched Ellie leave with a locked folder. What Linda didn't know was that the folder held only decoys, duplicate papers that looked official but meant nothing, and hidden inside that same folder was a tracking device. Over the next 3 days, we watched Linda's movements. She visited 2 lawyers, tried to consult a notary, and called our cousin Alan, the one who used to know a guy at the courthouse. Then she made a mistake. She entered the local probate clerk's office and asked if any recent wills had been filed under the Alton family name. The clerk, who knew Ellie, called us immediately. "She's running scared," Ellie said that evening. "She knows there's a version out there that cuts her out." "She's not wrong," I replied. On the 6th day of my Shady Pines stay, Linda showed up unannounced. The staff buzzed my room. "Your sister's here," the nurse said, uncertain. I nodded. "Let her in." She entered briskly, not bothering with pleasantries. "Why didn't you tell me about the new will?" she snapped. I sipped my tea. "Didn't know you were interested." She slammed her bag on the table. "Cutting me out after everything I've done for you? Like moving me here without asking?" "I was trying to help." I leaned back. "You didn't ask, you didn't discuss, you took control." Her voice shook. "You've always made me feel invisible." "This isn't about feelings, Linda. This is about control." She stood abruptly. "You're going to regret this." I looked her in the eye. "Number, I'm going to enjoy watching you realize none of this worked." She stormed out. 10 minutes later, Ellie walked in. "Well?" she asked. I handed her a USB stick. "Security footage, audio 2, from today." Ellie smiled. "This is the final piece?" 3 days after Linda's outburst, Ellie scheduled a formal meeting with our estate attorney, Mr. Rourke. She invited Linda under the pretense of clarifying documents. Linda arrived 20 minutes early. When I walked into the room with Ellie, her eyes widened. "You're supposed to be at Shady Pines," she said. "I checked out," I replied, "voluntarily and legally." Rourke gestured toward the conference table. "Let's begin." The folder in front of him contained everything: the new will, the trust documents, the video footage from Shady Pines, the unauthorized calls Linda had made to the law office. "Let's be clear," Rourke said. "Robert Alton is of sound mind, evaluated independently. No guardianship has been granted. He retains full legal agency." Linda looked stunned. "This is a setup." "No," I said calmly. "This is evidence." Rourke slid a new document across the table. A formal no-contact request. "Effective immediately," he said. "You're not to contact Robert without legal counsel present." She stood to leave, but paused at the door. "This isn't over." "No," Ellie said. "It's just beginning." Back at my house, I opened the windows wide. The first thing I did was remove every object Linda had touched. The kitchen felt cleaner, the air lighter. I brewed coffee and sat in the sunroom with my journal open. Ellie entered with a fresh stack of papers. "Bank records," she said. "Linda tried accessing 2 of your retirement accounts. She failed, but it's documented." "She's bold," I muttered. "She's desperate," Ellie replied. The camera system lit up. A man appeared on the porch, someone we didn't recognize. He knocked once, looked around, then slipped an envelope through the door slot. Inside, a letter from Linda's lawyer. "She's contesting the will," Ellie read aloud, "claiming undue influence, mental incapacity, and coercion." I laughed. "She's going down every path, hoping one sticks." "That means we go to court," Ellie said. "Good," I said. "Let them see everything." I stood, stretching my back. "Let's scan every page of the ledger. Make 5 copies." "Already done," Ellie replied with a grin. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Clean, formal, quiet. The judge sat behind a polished wooden desk, flipping through documents as we entered. Linda sat with her lawyer, tightly wound in a gray suit. She didn't look at me. The hearing began. Her lawyer spoke first, painting her as the dutiful sister, concerned for my well-being, claimed I'd been manipulated, that Ellie had used her legal knowledge to isolate and redirect family assets. Then Rourke stood, calm, precise. He presented the medical evaluations, the notarized trust, the legal history of asset transfers. Then he played the clip, Linda's confrontation at Shady Pines. The judge raised an eyebrow. Then he read excerpts from the ledger. Finally, he looked at me. "Mr. Alton, would you like to make a statement?" I stood. "Only this. Being old doesn't mean being weak, and caring for someone doesn't mean controlling them. My sister forgot that. I didn't." Silence filled the room. The judge nodded once. "I find no grounds for contestation. The trust and will stand as filed." Linda's shoulders sank. Ellie placed her hand over mine. We had won. The courtroom decision didn't just end Linda's legal claim, it triggered a domino effect. Within a week, Linda's lawyer withdrew from her case. Client refused to follow advice. His statement read, translated, she'd gone rogue. Her social circle, those weekly brunch friends and club acquaintances, began pulling away. Word travels fast in a small town, especially when it's dressed in scandal. She left 3 voicemails on Ellie's phone, not mine. I just want to talk to him, she said on the last one. I was angry. I thought I was protecting him. I didn't call her back. Instead, I went out to the garden for the first time in a year. The soil was dry but workable. I pulled weeds, trimmed hedges, lost myself in the routine of making things grow again. Some plants bounce back, others don't. You learn not to mourn every dead root. 2 weeks later, a handwritten envelope arrived. It was from Linda. Inside, a 5-page letter. She wrote about our childhood, about Dad's silence, about how I'd always seemed stronger, more focused, how she'd felt like the sidekick in her own life. I wanted to be seen, she wrote, and when I couldn't get respect, I tried to take control. There was no apology, just explanations, some half-true, some hollow. I read it twice, then I folded it and placed it in the bottom drawer of my desk, not to forget it, but not to hold on to it either. Forgiveness doesn't require forgetting, but it does require release. That night, I sat by the window and wrote in the ledger for the last time. Final entry. The lesson wasn't about betrayal. It was about who I became because of it. I closed the book and never opened it again. That Saturday, Ellie surprised me with an envelope of her own. It's from me, she said, and the firm. Inside was a printed deed transfer. You now fully own the cabin up north, she smiled. We finalized the name change this week. I stared at the paper, stunned. Ellie, you didn't need to, she interrupted gently. You gave me the tools to protect myself. This is just me doing the same for you. A week later, I packed a bag and drove north. The cabin sat nestled between tall pines and a still lake, far from the noise of courtrooms and caretakers. I unpacked slowly, savoring the silence. The fireplace still worked. The tools were where I left them 10 years ago. I stood on the porch with a cup of coffee and watched the sun cut through the mist. It was quiet, not the quiet of loneliness, the quiet of freedom. The cabin had aged well. Built with my own hands over 2 summers in the late 90s, it stood like a memory made solid. The pine walls held the scent of 100 winters. The floor creaked in all the familiar spots. The lake behind it shimmered with the same glassy surface I remembered. I spent my first night there in silence. No TV, no emails, just the crackle of firewood and the whisper of wind against the trees. I slept deeper than I had in years. The next morning, I made a list. Not a ledger. This one was different. A rebuild list. Things to fix, oil, replace. The dock needed sanding. The roof needed sealing. The trail behind the cabin had overgrown. Each task became a meditation. Each hammer strike a form of therapy. I wasn't running from what happened. I was reclaiming what came next. Ellie came up the following weekend. She brought groceries, her laptop, and a little wireless speaker that played jazz in the background as we worked on fixing the porch steps. Feels good up here, she said, squinting into the sun. Better than courtrooms, I replied. She nodded, then added softly, I talked to Aunt Linda. I looked up. She's calmer, Ellie continued. She asked if I'd pass along a photo of you and her from the year you built this place. Ellie handed me the picture. 2 younger versions of ourselves, standing beside an unfinished wall, her hair full of sawdust, my arms slung across her shoulders. I stared at it for a long moment. She's trying, Ellie said. I know, I replied, but some things aren't meant to be rebuilt. We said nothing else about it. That night, after Ellie left, I placed the photo in a box, not to throw away, but not to frame either. Some memories are best kept in the attic of the heart. Autumn came fast that year. The leaves turned with fierce purpose, gold and crimson racing down the mountainside. I watched it from the porch, wrapped in a flannel blanket, tea in hand. I started writing again, not ledgers, not lists, stories, short ones, about bridges, about people, about choices. Ellie suggested publishing a collection. People need stories like yours, she said, quiet, true ones. We set up a website, nothing fancy, just a place to share. Each time someone left a comment, I felt something shift, a connection rekindled, not to the world that had nearly discarded me, but to the one I'd built back, piece by piece. One afternoon, I received a letter from the Shady Pines staff, handwritten, personal. "We miss your chess games," it said. "You taught us more than we realized." I smiled. I hadn't just escaped something bad. I had created something better. It happened on a Thursday. Dark clouds rolled in from the north, heavy and low. The lake turned steel gray, and the wind howled like it remembered things it couldn't say. I was sitting at the old writing desk when the storm knocked the power out. No light, no internet, just the sound of rain punching the roof and trees swaying like giants. I lit a lantern and waited. Sometimes silence brings answers no voice can offer. In that quiet, I thought of Linda, of childhood games and shared birthdays, of the ways we tried to survive our parents' absence, of the girl who used to sneak extra cookies into my school bag. I thought about her letter again, her loneliness, her anger, her desperation, and I realized maybe I wasn't the only one who felt erased. That night, I wrote one more letter, not to correct her, not to forgive her, just to tell her who I had become, not the man she betrayed, but the man who learned how to start over. Spring came slowly, gently. The snow melted in sheets, the trees stretched back toward the sky, and the lake rippled like it had something new to say. I stood on the dock one morning, barefoot, steam rising from a coffee mug in my hand, and I felt weightless, not young, not invincible, just enough. I walked back inside, sat at my desk, and opened a new journal. Not the ledger. That one was done. This one was untitled. I wrote, "There are two kinds of endings in life. The ones we see coming and the ones we create for ourselves." I closed the book. No more ledgers, no more plans, just mornings in pine trees and long, slow days. And for the first time in years, I didn't need to watch my back. I just watched the sun rise. Sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who try to rewrite your story. But your past, your truth, it's yours to guard. Life isn't about how many times you're tested. It's about how quietly you choose to rebuild. If you ever feel forgotten, remember, being underestimated is the oldest superpower known to man. And if you walk away with just one lesson, let it be this: protect your peace, even from your family.